You can measure a man or car by the company it keeps. And for the 2013 AMG SLS GT Coupe, its peer group is the MP4, R8, Gallardo, and 458. Tough crowd. Here on the World's Fastest Car Show, we strive to show you some of the world's most beautiful cars in action. We're very excited to have the AMG SLS GT, which has become, quite rightly, a design icon. Now, many of you may know that the streets of Los Angeles are a favorite location for directors to shoot some of the world's top car commercials. I thought I'd take you for a little guided tour of some of the top spots. And of course, another place that they film car commercials is here at Willow Springs Raceway. It's also a very good place to blat around in an SLS GT. Now, I'm that excited to show you this car in the same way I would be introducing a mate to my sexy new girlfriend, because she is that hot. Just take a look at it. It's a front engine, rear-wheel drive, two-door coupe. Almost the entire chassis is made of aluminum. And what made this such a special Mercedes was that when it was launched, it was the first vehicle 100% done by AMG, of course, under the watchful eye of the Mercedes folks. So it really is a unique vehicle. This one is in what they call Magno Allanite Grey. Matte grey, I think is the other word you could describe it, which is very fitting because for me, there's always been something military-like about the original SLR and now the SLS. It's as though you've got this huge missile and you've strapped the driver all the way at the back. It's sort of that formidable. Really not too many things differentiate this from its predecessors. Slightly darker front and rear light housings. It's got the red AMG branded calipers, two-piece front rotors. And there it is. Just take a look at that. The famous AMG V8 6.3 litre. And as everybody knows, it's hand-signed, engraved there by the master engine builder. It's just cool to see every time you look at it. Now, I think it does give you an idea, though. From the outside, the car does look very front-heavy. But when you see it sort of naked, you realize how much work has gone into making the engine as far back and as low down as possible. Carbon fiber all through the engine bay. It almost deserves a show of its own. Moving to the side, of course, perhaps the most iconic design feature ever on any car was the original Gullwing doors, which are carried on through to the SLS GT here. Just look at this, typical beautiful Mercedes detail. Out pops the door handle, and then at a 70-degree angle, up come the doors. It's got 5-foot clearance there. And you know what, they may look easy, but I don't think they were at all that simple to actually design and make. Coming around to the rear, it gives you an idea of sort of the stature and the footprint that the SLS GT has. Underneath here, a very sophisticated rear diffuser. It's got these mesh vents here, which also help expel and propel the air from underneath the car. And then, of course, the twin chrome exhaust tips. Does sound good, doesn't it? All right, let's go inside. And of course, from the interior point of view, there's a level of build quality that is not just expect, but appreciate with Mercedes-Benz. A few of the top things I like about this car is, well, I've grown to like the steering wheel. I did find it a little bit sort of skinny when I first jumped in the car, but flat bottom 3-spoked AMG wheel, pretty cool. But perhaps the coolest thing on the inside of the SLS GT is this little AMG button here that when you push it, brings up the AMG performance entertainment system right here in the middle, and it just belies its full performance race heritage here with the AMG brand. It's got data, race, setup. The one I'm going to go out on track with is actually going to be showing power, braking and throttle application. The rest of the interior is just gorgeous, and definitely when the doors close down, you know that you're in something pretty special. And while I'm inside, let's go driving. Just a little disclaimer before we really get going. The SLS GT actually has some of the most sophisticated onboard engine management, traction control, gearbox mapping programs available to anyone and any car. First up, I'm going to switch the gearbox to the manual mode. In Sports Plus, it's more than capable. In fact, almost an uncanny intuition to the mapping. But I have a little control problem here on a racetrack, and I like to be in manual. I'm also going to change the AMG Adaptive Performance Suspension from Sport to Sport Plus. It doesn't have comfort, which you certainly don't need on the racetrack. It's kind of redundant point here. But while I was driving around town, I do kind of wish I'd had a comfort mode. And finally, I'm going to turn off the traction control completely. I know I shouldn't. The onboard electronics are that good, but I just want to have fun. So there we are. Let's go for a ride. It just has a remarkably throaty roar from that naturally aspirated V8, which is actually refreshing because all I seem to have driven recently is supercharged and turbocharged vehicles. But of course, all that horsepower and the way it delivers it through that AMG power plant means that you've really got to hold on, because it is extraordinarily responsive. Lots of power and oodles of torque, which means, of course, with that traction control off, just a little flick of my foot and I go sideways. But in my defense, I'm going to say that having the nanny aids off is actually a great way of me to evaluate the famous SLS GT weight balance. It's almost perfect on paper, and in practice allows me to control the slide just with a little bit, just with a little flick of my foot. So it is very precise. So you could say it's mid-corner breakaway on demand. Now, a huge plus is that it has very limited body roll. But where that becomes a little bit of a negative is right now. Look at this under braking. As I brake a little bit late. I actually almost can't stop the car. It's right on a knife edge whether you make the corners under braking, and I attribute that to really it doesn't dive down at all at the front. So you have to be absolutely inch perfect on your braking point. I can hear you now saying, well, if you were inch perfect, you wouldn't have that problem. You know, as I said, if you brake in the right spot, those huge front brakes really do their job. But I really would love to be trying the carbon fiber brakes, which are a very expensive option on the SLS GT. But I think on the racetrack, there'd be that little missing ingredient. All right then, I'll let the car cool down. To be honest, if you're driving around Beverly Hills or whatnot, it's just perfect. It's a Mercedes. But if you take it to the racetrack, then you had better turn up with your A game. Now, I've been on the edge of this all day, so I might as well do it. You know what? It does still prove that it's good to be king. By that I mean, if you've got the money, you can buy a car that will put some lead in your pencil. Also, well, finally, there's one very cool detail on the Munroni, and that is, it tells you that if you own this car, you will spend an additional $7,400 over the course of 5 years compared to a normal car in terms of gasoline. If I owned one, would I care? Would I heck?
Check back each week for more on your eBay Motors mobile app.
Bloody dizzy.